Even if you are not afraid of love, I guarantee that you know somebody who is. Because this problem seems to be incredibly pervasive throughout our culture. And I'm not sure why it is. Perhaps because innately we are pack animals and we want to fit in, and our social structures are such that we prioritize, at least in the West, the United States predominantly, and it's different depending on where you go in the world. We prioritize politeness and facades and keeping it together. And deeply rooted under that is a fear of rejection, a fear of being seen, a fear of being held, especially in our dark moments, wanting to crawl away under the shadows of the covers alone. We, at our root, many of us, again, not everybody, but many of us have a journey of self-love where we have to learn how to be within ourselves, by ourselves, and feel okay with that. And when we start to look outside for the love that we are trying to give ourselves, we draw to us impossible situations. Because you can be in a relationship and be afraid of love. I'll say it again because it's really, really important. You can be in a relationship and be terrified of love and intimacy. And what I observe in clients and talking to people is that this is more common than it is rare. People have a hard time being free to be themselves, connecting intimately and with authenticity. And as a result, they do not open themselves up to the fullest expressions of love. And romance is not love. Affection is not love. It is an act of an emotion. It is an expression of what one is feeling. But there are many degrees and sensations of love. And in fact, love itself is a vibration. We characterize the emotional experience of love. We characterize it with cultural ideologies. And we pass this down in our movies and our books, in our relationship models. And we put a linguistic stamp on it and we say, this is love. And when we start falling into love and the limerence phases and getting to know each other, what we do is we put a stamp on it and we say, this is love. Even though it hasn't even reached the pinnacle of love. But this is what we do in our cultural programming. There's no evil agenda here. This is actually just happenstance. This is literally what happens based on the social paradigms that we create and maintain and voluntarily participate in. We actually propagate ideas of what love is based on what has been handed down to us. Completely normal. And so, depending on your space and time point, you going through the emotional stages of developing a relationship, you're going to put a stamp on it. You're going to say, this is what love is. And then you're going to feel, maybe not you, but some other listener, perhaps, like something is wrong if you're not in that dopaminergic rush of love. If you're not in the falling in love, and then you go chasing the tail of this love dragon, not understanding the stages of love, and that love has a progression of deepening, and that the vibration and the essence of love can actually be present with or without a relationship, which makes it very confusing when you meet a soul contract, like a twin flame, or a different type of soul contract, and there are many. It makes it very confusing because you might not have any romantic inclinations for the person necessarily, but you feel love for them. But it's a different type of love. So the mind grapples with it because the stamps that have been given to us, this is what love is. Nothing more, nothing less. We package it together and we celebrate Valentine's Day and we go on holidays and we meet the family and maybe we even make our own family and we have Christmases and fights and then all of a sudden you start feeling a different type of love and you're like, I'm confused because I don't think I want this Christmas, Thanksgiving holiday season and this whole relationship package, but I'm feeling love. How does this work? And so part of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that we have to understand how ideas and labels and constructs of behavior come to us. We have to understand from a higher perspective what everything means when we look at society. We look at how we build our realities, how we build relationships. And this is why I work with a lot of people in soul contracts who are trying to grapple with, well, not a lot of people. I'm selective about who I work with, and I'm still relatively new. I'm a couple years in. So I work with people who struggle with how to be in different states of love in our modern day world. Some are married, already in a partnership that's in a stable union, and they are experiencing love with somebody else. Some are not married and are experiencing love with people who are married. And it's quite confusing because they don't necessarily want to disrupt the union, but they're still feeling love. And there are many manifestations and iterations. But what I want to share with you is that almost everybody at some level comes to realize that the love that they are seeking is not the love that has been stamped. And what most people build, what people really want, is this deeper essence of being free to be fully themselves and connecting with this soulful love that ignites one's belief in poetry, spirituality, who turns atheists into God-loving, fearing beings, who turns agnostics into mystics. That is the pinnacle of opening oneself up to love. But it requires not only this deep acceptance, you literally have to accept the journey. You have to say yes and open yourself up and let the universe work on your behalf. But once you do that, there is a slew of patterns and shadow work and self-sabotage and old intimacy wounds that get in the way of the very thing that you are trying to build. And this creates a lot of problems for people, because now not only do we have this stamp of what society says relationships should be, which we're already going against the grain of that at some point on the consciousness expansion and ascension journey, because we realize there's more to life than living in just a 3D essence. So we have to build our own structure that makes sense for us, and everybody's a little bit different. So already we are pushing the boundaries of what we've already known, and then trying to ground and experience this other love in whatever form and fashion, and it takes many different shapes, and trying to bring that into our everyday experience without effing it up. This is the reality. Many people F it up because there is a process of trial and tribulation to get to the root of why you've never had it before, or why you've struggled to keep it when you have had it, why you've destroyed it, sometimes intentionally, burned it to the ground, why you walked away from it, why you ignored it, why you hid from the light of that, why you ran to somebody else's arms when it was right there in front of you, waiting for you to reach out and to embrace it. These patterns of self-sabotage, it's amazing how they play out. It actually is so amazing to see how people behave, myself included. I'm not excluded from this conversation. It is so amazing to see how when people are afraid, they find every reason in the book to prioritize other things other than the love that they're trying to build, or the people who are embodying that complementary consciousness fragment, which is activating the experience of that higher love within them. And I see this a lot in twin flame unions that don't get to union because one person, or sometimes both, very often it can be a mirroring situation, but not always. One person will be so frightened and afraid that they will do their best to destroy any possibility, any hope of union with that person. And the way that they behave is so disrespectful, is so, appalling, absolutely appalling. Again, not everybody. But the people who are the most afraid of love behave the worst. And so when we're talking about these spectrums for contrast and comparison, we're talking about those who are so frightened of feeling that deeply or being seen that completely that they go out of their way to absolutely crush the spirit of the person that is embodying the potential of their union. And yet, they don't feel better after they've burned it all down. They don't feel complete. They don't feel like a good job was done. Sometimes they actually feel worse about themselves. And some of them go on to just take their attention and just throw it into another person, like a rebound or a karmic or somebody that is safer, doesn't challenge them as much. Some of them go back to their spouses that they previously felt encumbered by. And they don't feel deep down inside right with themselves and right with their soul. I hear from them. I hear from people like this on one of my channels where they talk about how much they were feeling and how frightened they were and how they ran away. How they just ghosted. Literally, they just stopped talking to somebody that they loved so much because they were so frightened of it. And this is not on the very end of the destruction spectrum. It's getting more towards the middle. And you can find yourself wherever you might be in the spectrum. And years later, sometimes decades later, it still weighs on them. Because deep down inside, they haven't resolved the fact that actually they were afraid. And the universe brought a gift that they started to open and threw it away. It reminds me of somebody actually who I met in my travels. And she was so afraid of love as well. And she met somebody very significant who was treating her beautifully and everything that she had ever wanted. And she went out of her way to sabotage it. Actually went out of her way. We're no longer friends because of how she handled things. But it was really surprising. And I remember having a conversation with her where I was pleading with her. The universe brought you this wonderful gift of a human being to experience the love that you've always wanted. So why are you taking this gift and throwing it away? And at the root of it, she was scared. She was scared to actually be vulnerable. She was scared to be seen. And I could relate to that. I've had my own experience being afraid of love and the intensity of connections. And as I have done the personal work to intentionally move beyond this, what I have observed is the many variations that people are trapped in fear and don't even know it. They actually don't know that that's the cause of why they're behaving in the ways that they're behaving. They actually don't know why they're behaving in the ways that they're behaving. They just know they're uncomfortable, so they have to get out. They have to run away. They have to crush it. They have to, whatever it is, whatever their landscape is. And if people understood that behind it all was a deep fear of being loved, having love that profound, that shakes your world and rocks your existence, that transforms you into a version of yourself that you never even knew was possible. That's the power of love. If they understood that all it took was seeing and having that awareness of their inner workings of their mind, that deep down they were still afraid, they might choose to behave differently. They might harness the timing and the power of the universe, giving them the gift of love. And that type of love differently versus going back to the Valentine's Day stamp. Oh, this is love. This is relationships on easy mode. If this resonates with you, I have started a True Love Mastermind group where I help people through their patterns of self-sabotage so they can find or keep true love, the next level love, the next level relationship. The first episode was about giving our power away to love and what happens when we lose ourselves because of the wounds that we have inside. And we follow a story of an influencer who got sucked into a alleged cult. And there were signs all along the way that she could have listened to, but she didn't. And this is typical of those that give their power away to love and completely become consumed and destroyed by it. And the next masterclass is on intuition and how to listen and develop the inner knowing within ourselves, and how to practice that to prepare for our choices in love and being able to assess the people that we are giving ourselves to. Because when we are afraid, it's frightening to do that. So we need to choose carefully and choose wisely. And we can't do that if we don't know how to listen. So if you are interested, it's on the school platform, skool.com/True Love Masterminds, or you can click the link in the description box.